Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem Rakakadash. Double honors, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teachers of truth and sincerity. And shout out to the Akims out there in the four quarters of the earth who claim this truth. Brakah the Yahweh, Brakah the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem Rakakadash, Brakatum. So, after the fall of Bashar al-Assad and the legitimate government of Syria, as they installed the new puppet government, the ISIS, if you will, Hayat al-Shem leader al-Jalani, now they want to get their hands on Iran. And, some reports saying that he may be backing down from that. Others are saying he's going through anyways, despite Russia's warning. So just continuing on from yesterday, war is in the air, The Department of War, it's not a Department of Defense anymore, it's a Department of War. They're getting ready for war, they're preparing for war.
The United States appears to be preparing to attack Iran over claims of violence against protesters in a move that could spark a dangerous war in the Middle East. The protests broke out in Iran on December 28th as a result of the worsening economic conditions and turned violent on January 2nd after President Donald Trump set a red line vowing to punish Tehran if protesters are killed. Trump renewed his threats on January 12th, saying that Iran has begun to cross his red line and that he has some very strong military options. Trump was reportedly presented with options, including strikes, in addition to others involving cyber operation options and psychological campaigns to disrupt Iranian command structures, communications, and state-run media. Despite Trump's threats, large crowds of Iranians gathered in Tehran and other cities across the Islamic Republic to show support for the government. The intensity of protests also decreased. Responding to this, Trump on January 13th told Iranian protesters that help is on its way. On January 14th, Iranian authorities held a mass funeral of 300 security personnel who were killed in the protests. Reports from Iranian monitoring groups revealed that the death toll from the protests has exceeded 2,000 people, including both protesters and security personnel. Tehran reportedly told regional countries, from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates to Turkey, that U.S. bases on their territories will be attacked if the U.S. targets Iran. In response to this threat, the U.S. began withdrawing troops from key bases in the region, including El Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Israel also began preparing for war, deploying additional air defense batteries and opening bomb shelters in several areas. Despite all this escalation, Trump said later in the day that Washington had been informed that the killing of protesters in Iran has ceased and that the Islamic Republic will not be carrying out executions. These remarks were mostly just an attempt to deceive Tehran. The decision to attack Iran was likely taken by the U.S. even before the protests. The main goals of any attack could include the Islamic Republic's nuclear and missile programs. Tehran's failure to respond appropriately could cause more internal unrest.
So, like everything else, these devils are going to go at it again. How Mossad and the CIA sabotaged economic protests in Iran to stir up chaos, but had failed. See, like everything else though, the Iranian government and the people of Iran are not fooled by the Western media. The peaceful protests over economic grievances began in Tehran's Grand Bazaar last month. Over the past week, turned violent amid pre-orchestrated, externally driven campaign engineered to escalate genuine discontent into a full-scale violent insurrection, aka ISIS-like style. Senior Iranian political leadership, including leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini, and President Pezeshkian, and Parliament Speaker Quilova, were quick to differentiate between lawful public assembly and the actions of foreign-backed rioters. The assessment was confirmed by the arrest of many Mossad and CIA operatives across the country. The judicial unveiling of fabricated casualty reports and forensic analysis exposed a coordinated digital disinformation campaign fueled by AI-generated content and manipulated audio recordings. So, again, just like Redacted said, these things are coming from all kinds of places, that it's mostly AI shit, just doctored. What do you think they're going to do to us to, pretty much, blaspheme to come against us? It's coming, A famine of the word is coming, and they're going to distort everything we say. We already know that they're using AI to change our message, to, change the toll, even to change languages, and make it sound like we're no different than those gutter rats that say Shalom, and don't even say the names Yahweh, Yahweh Shai, say Yahweh, but we're not those gutter rats. But that's what they're doing. They're using AI filters to alter our videos. So, like I said, if it sounds neutered or sounds altered, check me out on the other stations that don't do that, because I know YouTube has been caught doing that. Don't take them for their word, man. Check it out on the other channels. President Chump tells Iran he won't attack the country. So it sounds like he might be backing down. Of course, he pretends to back down, then he attacks anyways. So you can't trust anything he says. Iranian officials said on Thursday that President Trump informed Iran he doesn't plan to attack the country and asked Tehran to exercise restraint. Senator Lindsey Graham claimed on a post on X that Monoran's remarks weren't true. The circumstances around the necessary decisive action to be taken against Iran has nothing to do with President Trump's will or determination, Graham said. Nothing could be further from the truth. Quite the opposite, he said. Trump said on Wednesday that he was told the killing and executions inside Iran would stop. He made similar comments in a post on Truth Social. So like everything else, though, there's conflicting stories. But you can't trust anything Graham says either, Trump believes time is on his side to attack Iran, so he still plans to attack. If it's not this weekend, he'll still do it. Letting protests play out, moving U.S. military assets into place, and temporarily placating Gulf states to support Trump wait-and-see approach. Trump administration believes time is on his side, deciding if it should strike Iran, as the U.S. president weaves up and down an escalation ladder against the Islamic Republic. Demonstrators, basically, you already know the story and how they come and infiltrate it to make it look like. So, nonetheless, though, even Redacted News is saying they're going to attack Iran. The plan was already set into motion, despite Putin's warning. So, there's a newer video.
It is clear that Israel is calling the shots for a war with Iran. We have two conflicting stories from major news outlets. What they have in common is that it's Netanyahu who continues to make the decisions here, not President Trump.
That's
now, before
true.
we get excited, it's worth remembering that the last time that Trump and Netanyahu promised not to bomb Iran, they turned around and did it. So we can't pretend that they're not bluffing this time. It would be a fool me twice situation on our part. Here's what the major reports are, and then we're going to break them down. The New York Times is reporting that Netanyahu has now asked Trump not to bomb Iran. The reporting is that Israel is not ready to withstand the retaliation that inevitably would come from Iran. Now, this comes right after the Washington Post reported this. They say that a few weeks ago, Israel sent a delegation to Russia to assure Iran that Israel does not intend to strike unless they are struck first. On its face, that sounds like reasonable de-escalation, but it's not, because at the very same moment, Netanyahu was in Washington prompting President Trump to strike Iran. So you see what's happening here. Israel is pretending that they won't initiate the war on its own, so long as they can get the U.S. to do it for them. Now, why would Israel bother with this trickery? Mostly for the PR of it. Because of Gaza, they realize that they can't be seen as the continual aggressors, but that's clearly what they want. Here's how the Post puts it, that they want to desire to avoid being perceived as escalating tensions. Not that they don't want to escalate, they don't want the perception. So if you can get your bitch, the United States, to do it for you, you're in the clear, right? But they really do want to escalate those tensions. Now, is Iran falling for this? According to the Post, they are not. Iranian officials responded positively to this Israeli outreach, but they are wary. Obviously, Iran believed that if the Israeli assurances were genuine, they leave open the possibility that the U.S. would carry out attacks on Iran as part of a campaign between these two allies. So they know that these two, and by these two it's the U.S. and Israel, are not to be trusted.
Yeah. Let's bring in Larry Johnson, former CIA intelligence officer, now to dissect all of this. Great to see you, Larry. Welcome back to the show.
Guys. Hey, let me just add. Actually, I have a bearskin hoodie and I've got 2 pairs of bearskin pants. They do work as advertised. So
fantastic! Thank you so much.
Do they ward off wolves? That's the real question.
Yeah, that's why I carry a sidearm. I'd recommend carrying, a nice 45 caliber, a 1911.
Yeah, when you're walking.
Yeah, stick
exactly.
to your guns.
Deer also come after you crazy.
That's what
too,
you know.
Hey, yesterday I just want to point out, Larry, yesterday speaking to hearing from Colonel Douglas McGregor, he said, asked about the intelligence back and forth, what's going on with these players behind the scenes, Israel getting busted and all of this on the streets of Iran. Colonel McGregor said, I'm not plugged into the intelligence community. There's one person that I trust, and that's Larry Johnson. If you want to get to the bottom of that, Larry Johnson is your guy. So guess what? Larry Johnson is on the show today. So Larry, you hear the New York Times, the Washington Post, with their stories. I got off the phone about 20 minutes ago from a source who told me that Israel got busted. and Putin was furious about this. It was really the behind-the-scenes work of Putin and some of the Middle East allies that actually stopped this from happening. What do you know?
Well, yeah, I think that's definitely part of the story. Let's go back to December 28th, Sunday, when Donald Trump's meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky. That day, an economic operation was launched, an economic attack on Iran that fell a dramatic fall in the price of their currency. And the Iranian economy is small enough that an organization like the CIA working with Israel can basically spend some time in advance, buy up a large number of the currency of Iran, and then when you dump it on the market and sell it, the price goes through the floor. That sparked legitimate economic protests. But this was programmed by I believe by the CIA and by Mossad to start the fire and then bring in the kindling and the gasoline to pour on it. And the kindling and gasoline came from a variety of sources. You've got Kurds, ethnic Kurds that are in Iran, and they've got ties across border. They were being paid to commit acts of violence. They were given Starlink terminals so that they could be in communication with foreign assets that were directing them. Similarly, with the group called the MEK, the Mujahideen al-Khalq, they were designated by the United States as a terrorist group in 1997. Even though that group had existed since 1964, they were described as a Marxist Islamist group that carried out acts of violence against U.S. citizens and against Iranian citizens, both under the Shah and under the Ayatollah. Well, in 2004, the CIA lined them up, put them in a camp, trained them in Albania, and started using them to carry out terrorist attacks in Iran. And then in 2012, we finally took them off the terrorist list because they're no longer terrorists, they're our guys. And then out in in eastern Iran, you've got the Baluchis in Baluchistan. And they've had a long-term relationship with the CIA. I know that firsthand from one of my buddies back in 1980 when we were planning the rescue operation to try to free the U.S. diplomats that had been taken hostage at the embassy. One of the means of communications was from rugs that were coming from Baluchistan to a rug shop in Bethesda, Maryland, right behind my house on Wisconsin Avenue. It was called Barbesian. And the messages were hidden in those rugs. So what I'm saying is there's not just one ethnic group. You've got a variety of ethnic groups that have had ties to these to foreign intelligence. They inflamed the situation. And the plan, I believe now, watching what has happened, the plan was that the government was going to be put into such a degree of chaos that when we launched the military strikes yesterday, then that would have brought the whole house down. Well, it failed. The operation to destabilize Iran started collapsing last Friday. Iranian security forces, they discovered the Starlink terminals. Russia and China were helping them with electronic warfare countermeasures to block those. And as they started blocking those, the people stopped showing up in the streets. And the IRGC and the Bajis, they started cracking down on the ones who were carrying out violence against Iranians. So what happened yesterday was also, it was exacerbated by that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey both told the United States, you're not flying over our territory to do this. And I think part of that was pressure that the Russians was bringing on to all of them. Because what Russia knows is that it's now invested heavily in Iran, as is China. They're not going to let the United States attack Iran and just try to destroy it. Now, the other element that's at play here is that 45% of the daily production of oil in the world comes out of the Persian Gulf. Iran can close the Strait of Hormuz in a heartbeat. Once that's closed, all of a sudden, 45% of the oil that's out in the world is no longer there. What does that do to the price of oil? It sends it into into space. And it would be good for Russia because now the price of oil is $150 a barrel, but it's going to have a devastating impact on other economies, both in causing inflation and forcing industries to shut down. So this very complex picture. But this simplistic crap that was being spun in the West that all we got to do is, put enough pressure and the Ayatollah is going to flee to Moscow. Nonsense.
This episode is brought to you by Rumble Premium, the home of free speech and exclusive content from the videos that matter. With Rumble Premium, you get ad-free viewing, access to exclusive shows, and premium features across the platform. We're talking about Steven Crowder's Mug Club, Tim Pool's Timcast, Russell Brand's Raw Commentary, and of course Redacted, plus tons of other bold creators that you won't find anywhere else. Whether it's breaking news, real talk, or the content that challenges the narrative, Rumble Premium puts you in the front row. Support creators who actually say what they mean in a place that they can say it and mean what they say. Go to rumble.com/premium/redacted to join today. One more time, that's rumble.com/premium/redacted, because truth should not come with a filter. Russia did prop up Syria and the Assad government for so long until they just couldn't do it anymore. So is this the delicate balance by which Iran hangs in the fate of a possible Assad government? What's the difference here?
Yeah, the difference is Bashar al-Assad didn't want to listen. The Russians said, "Hey, we'll help you. Let us come in and assist."
Yeah.
And Assad said, you're not old enough to remember, Natalie, but in the 60s, there was this television commercial for Excedrin. And as part of it, there was a mother talking to her daughter, and the daughter would go, "Mother, please, I'd rather do it myself." Well, that was Syria, okay? They told Mother Russia, "We'd rather do it ourselves." Well, that didn't turn out so well. Iran, in this case, they had actually told Russia something similar prior to the 12-day war in June. Russia had offered a military alliance, and the Iranians said, no, we'd rather do it on our own. On June 25th, when that war came to an end, that brief conflict, Iran went back to Russia and said, "Hey, guys, that offer you made, that sounded really good. Let's do that."
So there you have it, though. And
so
looks
what
like
you've had since then is extensive cooperation between Russia and China. So Iran is actually in a much stronger position now than it was, say, on June 12th of 2025.
Now, can I ask you, Lindsey Graham took to X and said, this idea that our Arab allies have intervened on behalf of Iran is beyond disturbing. Now, when something disturbs him, I usually am for it. That's my general rule. But is he thwarting something? Does Lindsey Graham know anything? Or do we have to worry about what this bloodthirsty demon wants to happen?
Yeah, no, I think it actually corroborates the other press reports you guys were citing at the outset, that in fact these Arab nations did tell Trump, "Hey, you can't use our airspace. You're not going to do this." One of the things that both China and Russia have brokered in the course of the last 2 years was a new alliance between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Previously, the Saudis were being used by the United States as a means to attack Iran, and the proxy war was being fought out in Yemen. But thanks to the intervention of Moscow and Beijing, you now have Iran. The defense minister from Iran has visited Saudi Arabia, vice versa. President Pezeshkian has met with MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. So they recognize they are not enemies as they were in the past. So and the Saudis also, I think, are looking at it very practically. They are the largest producer in the world. They do like 10.4 million barrels of oil per day. Russia does 10.3 million barrels of oil per day. And if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, Saudi Arabia's got taking some significant economic losses over that. They don't want that. And I think they recognize Iran now is in a stronger position than it was in June to fight back decisively. And I think they've made it clear. We'll close those straits in a heartbeat.
What does, from an
so there's that, and you already know that Babylon the Great is on its last leg. So like everything else, the deterrence between both. But like everything else, a plan had foiled, it looks like, pretty much so. But they're going to tell you, Iran's backing down. That's what Chump is telling everybody else, that, they're backing down. U.S. surging military assets to West Asia to prepare for war against Iran after Chump postpones attack. So they're still going in anyways. U.S. officials told the paper that the aircraft carrier USS Lincoln and some warships from its strike group were on their way to West Asia from the China Sea. A roughly week-long trip. U.S. is planning to send an array of warplanes to West Asia, including fighter jets and refueling aircraft and additional air defenses. According to other reports, the U.S. military's message to Chump amid his threats to bomb Iran is that there weren't enough U.S. assets in the region to face potential counterattack, which could target many U.S. bases in the region. Trump also reportedly told that U.S. strikes likely wouldn't result in regime change and could lead to a prolonged war. So, they're giving you the idea that, okay, we're going to hold back the attack. Okay, they're not killing protesters. But let's face it, though, their bluff was called. Peskin flags U.S.-Israeli role in riots. Putin says million-strong rallies show Iran's reality. Iranian president says the U.S., Israeli state, and some other European countries played direct role in the recent terrorist attacks in Iran. As Russian President Vladimir Putin said a million-strong rallies held afterward demonstrating the country's real conditions. He added that the massive and epic participation of Iranians in nationwide rallies on Monday foiled the rioters' plots. The great Iranian nation drew its epic and million-strong presence within a short time after the incidents put into the riots, Peskun said. The Iranian president thanked Russia for its supportive stance towards Iran and at the United Nations and other international forums. So, Putin still has a very strong influence, and we know that later he's going to be used, to bring down Babylon. But, like everything else, though, the allies, well, they're going to turn against Babylon because now they're asking for Orezhnik-type missiles. EU needs its own Orezhnik. France is within range of Russia's hypersonic ballistic missile, the president has warned. So like everything else, though, they want to prepare their defenses too, in case, which Russia would only attack if they're attacked, but nonetheless, though. French President Macron said his country and its European partners will accelerate the development of new long-range weapons, pointing to Russia's Orezhnik as a technical achievement capable of shifting the balance of power in the short term. So like everything else, he wants long-range missiles, so what are long-range missiles for, right? Think about that. They're saying it's for one thing. We know it's because they eventually, these allies are going to turn against Babylon. The initiative that we launched, known as ELSA, makes perfect sense that when we just observed for the second time the firing of a very long-range missile known as Orezhnik, Macron told the audience. If we want to remain credible, we Europeans, especially France, which has certain technologies, must acquire new weapons that will change the situation in the short term. So, they just want to have their defenses, but they're looking at other types of styles. Nervous-looking Macron urges military to produce its own version of Russia's Orezhnik. Remarks he specifically invoked Russia's hypersonic Orezhnik missile, which has been launched against Ukraine at least 2 times, and one just a week ago that is capable of reaching speeds exceeding Mach 10. So, pretty much, though, he wants one. We'll play this, if it'll play. Slovakia, if it doesn't. You know how this devil is.
En tout son sens, alors que nous venons d'observer pour la 2e fois le tir d'un missile de très longue portée dit Orezhnik par la Russie sur l'Ukraine. Ce tir est un signal très clair d'une puissance dotée, mais qui a décidé de se doter de telles capacités.
So they want nuclear
Tous
weapons
ceux qui
too.
pensent que la Russie serait une question qui ne nous
I think
concerne
they
pas,
do have
ils doivent
nuclear
être plus 5
weapons.
sur 5. Nous sommes à portée de ces tirs. Et donc, si nous voulons, là aussi, rester crédibles, nous devons, nous, Européens, et tout particulièrement la France, qui dispose de certaines technologies, nous saisir de ces nouvelles armes qui changeront la donne à court terme. Et avec tout particulièrement nos partenaires allemands et britanniques, nous devons avancer avec force sur ces capacités de feu dans la très grande profondeur. Capacité qui vient accroître notre crédibilité et épauler notre dissuasion nucléaire.
Yeah. So like everything else, they say for nuclear deterrence. Well, against who? Russia? Nah, I think against Babylon, because you know that Sweden just sent in troops. First European troops to arrive in Greenland in the dark of night. And a move that will further inflame already rising tensions over Greenland. The first European troops quietly begun arriving on the island following President Chump's threat and declarations on the need for Washington to take control of the territory. Newspaper reports that Danish military transport landed overnight in Nuuk, Greenland's capital, carrying Danish soldiers alongside members of French armed forces. So, like everything else, Now they're coming in to defend it. So any attack against their country. So here they are. Because it's really looking like Trump is going to go through with this attack as well. And he might just do that since he was deterred on his plans for Iran. So we could see an attack on Greenland soon as well. And like everything else though, this is Revelation chapter 17 verse 16. Another brother's breaking it down. So we'll play that. Oh, well, it's Apostle Tahar.
Breaking news, breaking news. Swedish armed forces will arrive in Greenland on Wednesday at the request of Denmark in order to support military and security operations on the territory and in the northern Atlantic under the recently unveiled Operation Arctic Endurance. Let me read that from the top. Sweden's Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson has announced that, so in other words, the Swedes have joined this alliance because they think the U.S. is going to do something. Like I said before, this is the stupidest move that the president could do because they don't understand. They don't understand, the prophecies. We're finding out that these Christians don't understand. Now, I don't think any Christian, well, not one Christian would say the NATO and EU nations are part of the beast, because they would have to admit that the woman that sits on top of the beast would have to be America. They would never say that Babylon in the book of Revelation is America. I'm sounding like a broken record. So they can't say Babylon is America, and they can't say NATO and the EU represent the 7 heads and 10 horns of the beast. They can't say that. You know what I'm going to do? Let me try something. So there it is. So you got France, you got Germany, you got Swedish armed forces. So they're ready to fight against America, which is the breakup of NATO and the EU. Let me just go here to let me do this. I'm going to do this here. Now this right here, I just corrected the chat, because they said that GMS says that the Northern Army is talking about Russia. So I corrected them. Let me show you the correction in case you didn't see the other video. They kept saying that we said it is Russia. Okay, what's the Israeli take on Joel? Let's see if I can find it. Okay, right here. Said it right here. I said, no, you're wrong. GMS teaches that the Northern Army is America. So they changed it up right when I put this comment in. You're right to correct that. Within GMS, especially the Northern Army in Joel 2 verse 20 is taught as America, not Russia. Thank you. Thanks for calling that out. So they completely changed the whole thing. Anyway, let me go ahead and ask this question. I'll do it this way. Let me do it this way. Is NATO and the EU the fulfillment of Revelation 1716. So let's see what they say. Okay, I just put in general. I don't want what GMS view was at this point. Short answer, according to GMS, yes, NATO and EU are central to the fulfillment of Revelation 17:16, but it's important to explain how and why they say that, because it's a prophetic betrayal model, not a simple EU bad reading. So that's the scripture right there. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, he shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh with fire, and burn her with fire. GMS framework, step by step, whore, America, Babylon the Great, and GMS teaching Babylon the Great. United States, America is the economic, military, and cultural center of the beast system. She rides the beast by dominating global trade, finance, and this is straight GMS orthodoxy. Yeah, it's dogma, you know. We say it is, and it is. The beast, the Western power structure, the beast is not one nation. The post-World War II Western imperial system, military, economic, and political alliances within the system, NATO, the EU, are seen as major organs of the beast. The 10 horns, allied powers under the beast. GMS does not rigidly count 10 modern countries. Instead, they teach 10 completeness, fullness of power. The horns are America's allies and satellite nations. This includes EU member states, NATO partners, Western allied, when I say Western, is Western allied, west of Europe, Western Europe, as opposed to Eastern Europe, which is Russia to the uttermost east. Industrial powers, they shall hate the whore, alliance collapse. That is a key GMS point. America's allies will turn against her. The same nations that benefited from U.S. dominance will, that's Obadiah 1:7, resent her control, reject her leadership, ultimately participate in her destruction. This hatred manifests as political betrayal, economic abandonment, military confrontation, burn with fire, nuclear destruction. GMS is very literal here. They teach the fire, thermonuclear missiles. NATO, EU nations will be involved directly or indirectly. Some launch, some allow launches, some stand down and let it happen. This aligns in GMS teaching with Isaiah 47, Jeremiah 50, Jeremiah 51, Revelation 18. Important notes in GMS teaching. GMS does not say NATO, EU are righteous or that they escape judgment. Well, in a way they do. They're not going to be hit with missiles. They are instruments used temporarily after Babylon's destruction. All nations are judged immediately. The beast system itself is destroyed. Right, because they're going to go into slavery. This is not going to be the end of NATO and the EU. They're just going to be working in the fields, wherever we want them to work. One sentence GMS summary: NATO and the EU are part of the beast who member states eventually turn on America, Babylon, fulfilling Revelation 17:16 by betraying, stripping, and helping destroy her with nuclear fire. And that's all I'm going to read on that. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say shalom.
So, like everything else, you can see that we put up videos all the time on this subject, and you know, we have great leaders over us, right? You know, Apostle Tahar is the head leader, you know, and like everything else, you know, the idea is to do a video every day at least 10 minutes or more. And if it's within you, try to do 2 or 3 videos a day, right? If it's within you, you know. But know what your role is. But be diligent about this, you know. Don't slack. And if you miss one day, do 2 the next day, you know. Keep this thing going, man. Keep the fire burning. Don't let it burn out, man. It's not a time to let go of the plow. Because many are going to be judged for letting go of that plow. Moscow rejects Chump claim of Russian plan to control Greenland. Because like everything else, though, you know, they want Greenland. He wants Greenland so bad. Chump claims the U.S. must occupy Greenland in order to save it from Russia and China. Russian Foreign Minister spokesperson Shekharya said on the 15th of January that Russia and China have no ambitions to control Greenland, denying D.C.'s claims about threats to the island from Moscow and Beijing. Neither Russia nor China has announced any claims to Greenland. Yeah, only Chump is doing that. U.S. President Chump said the U.S. must seize control of Greenland, claiming that there are Russian destroyers and there are Chinese destroyers, and bigger, there are Russian submarines all over the place. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland. And that's that. Where they're going to do it if we don't. So like everything else, though, she went on TV to, you know, pretty much say, hey, you know, this is ludicrous. But it ain't the first time that the U.S. has lied. Speaking of the peace plan, Chump announces phase 2 of the Gaza peace plan. Well, like everything else, though, we can see that the first one's gone so well. They're still attacking every fucking day. You know, there really was no ceasefire. Hamas has to honor its commitments the easy way or the hard way. U.S. terrorist warned, you know, Donald Trump. Donald Trump announced the second phase of his plan to settle the conflict against Gaza. Despite both sides repeatedly accusing each other of breaching earlier agreed ceasefire, the next step is demilitarization and the establishment of a new technocratic government in the Palestinian enclave, according to the U.S. president. So basically, you know, you pretty much got to, Hamas has to totally demilitarize. We will secure a comprehensive demilitarization agreement with Hamas, including the surrender of all weapons and dismantling of every tunnel, Chump wrote. So pretty much so, yeah, they have to completely surrender. Yeah, sounds like a good plan. Sounds like the one that had about Lebanon, you know, or else Israeli state's going to attack. They're going to attack anyways. Israeli state continues bombing Gaza despite the launch of second ceasefire phase. Well, of course, because the Israeli state can do what they want to. They're not even in violation, according to the U.S. Israeli terrorists continue bombing and destroying buildings in the Gaza Strip on Thursday, despite the announcement of the second phase, as casualties from ongoing attacks continue to rise. The ministry reported that the total deaths since the start of the Israeli offensive on the 7th of October 2023 has reached 71,441, with 171,329 wounded. So that's pretty much nearly 250,000. Since the ceasefire came into effect on the 11th of October, which really never went into effect, on the ground, Israeli terrorists continue to breach the ceasefire despite announcement by U.S. envoy Witkoff of the second phase of President Trump's plan to end the war against Gaza. So, like everything else, continued attacks raise renewed concerns over the durability of the ceasefire and the worsening humanitarian situation across the Gaza Strip. But, you know, Israeli state, well, they can do whatever the fuck they want to, but Hamas has to, you know, disarm so the Israeli state can have their way. Israeli terrorists steal 250 goats from Syria and smuggle them to occupied West Bank. Soldiers seized animals during an operation in Syrian territory 2 weeks ago and transported them to illegal outposts. Well, they can have their way in Syria too, because, you know, the Syrian government ain't going to do anything about it. Israeli terrorists in Syria stole a herd of around 250 goats and smuggled them into the occupied West Bank. According to the report, a battalion from the Golan Brigade, which operates in the occupied Golan Heights, was conducting an operation in Syria which identified the herd belonging to Syrian farmers. Soldiers reportedly loaded the goats onto the trucks that appeared to have been prepared in advance and initially brought them into the Israeli territory. Well, like everything else, though, the the new government of Syria really ain't going to do anything about it because they want peace with the Israeli state. So the Israeli state can do whatever the fuck they want to. SDF accuses Damascus of declaring war against the Kurds. Oh, okay, because the Kurds are stealing oil, stealing resources from Syria and bringing it into Iraq. You know, and of course the Syrian government wants it back. You know, ultimately, U.S. President Chump already said that those oil fields belong to him, that they're his. You know, the Syrian army is preparing a new assault against the U.S.-backed Kurdish militia in the Aleppo countryside, Deir Hafar area. So, like everything else, though, you know, now there's a direct confrontation between the puppet government Hayat al-Sham and the U.S. We'll see how Chump talks his way out of this. Syrian Democratic Forces accused self-appointed Syrian President al-Jilani of declaring war against the Kurds in Syria, following a significant escalation of tensions between Damascus and the Kurdish group in recent weeks. Recent comments by al-Jilani amount to a declaration of war against the Kurds, said Ahmad, member of the SDF-linked Autonomous Administration of the North and East Syria Alliance. You know, so like everything else, though, here's what is coming from the Damascus site. Syrian government claimed the SDF was barring civilians from fleeing through a recently announced humanitarian corridor, claiming the group was forcing families to resort to unsafe alternate routes. Damascus has announced the opening of the corridor on Wednesday. So like everything else, though, you know, well, they're just trying to keep you know, this place unstable so the U.S. can continue to loot oil from Syria. And like everything else, though, well, we're in the time of Jacob's trouble, and it's going to intensify as we get close to the end, as this video goes into.
Shalom. Yahweh Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, L'cha, Kodash. Everyone is the apostle of the Elder Great Millstone. Shalom, Hopeful Lake. This is Buddy Call from the G-Man Sleep. We came with a quick edifying lesson. Don't know exactly how to give this title, but again, at the time of Jacob's trouble. It might be that, or I might do it off this verse in James 1. I'm about to read it. It's based off of the account brother's been hearing and listening the last couple of days. Now more information has been coming out about the Venezuela thing, and you see Esau Edom, but he went in there. He was wondering about why there wasn't as much resistance. He has some type of sonic weapons or vibrational weapons or whatever that basically causes people to like basically drop to the ground, man. All right, like it throws your frequency or whatever off, fucks with your mind. Your ears are ringing and shit so much you can't even hold a weapon. And they fall to the ground. That's how Esau Edom, through that technology that Yahweh Shemel shot blessing with that sword. We go back to Genesis 27 chapter. That's how he was able to do that. And again, it's thinking about how the more different weapons Esau Edom has, he's going to unleash on the tribes, man. And Yahweh Shemel Shai is going to use him to come down upon the 12 tribes of Israel. He took the so-called blessed healing of Native Americans, the men and women and children who are still rebellious, who still love Esau so much, who still want to stay here. All right, sellouts amongst the niggas who know the Israelites, amongst the circumcision, to regular Jacob in the world. We see the play, man. We see Jacob's trouble be forming, man. We see the ice age just begins, only going to intensify. Like I said, wait till Esau, pull some more shit that you ain't never seen out of his back pocket, man. All right, and that's why Yahweh Shemel Shai is why he gonna raise up certain of the Lord with that spiritual power. That's why Isaiah 59:19 we're gonna need that standard, man, because Esau, the Lord bless Esau's stuff on the left hand side, okay. So he gonna bless his men stuff with spiritual power on the right hand side. So this is Daniel 12:1. At that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. So great, we're entering that time, man. It's the same time it's talking about is when you read Jeremiah 30:7, that time of Jacob's trouble. It says the same thing. The one that is going to be written in the book, he shall be saved out of it. Jeremiah 30:7. All right. Right here. The elect men, they're going to be that heritage of protection. They're going to be that standard that Yahweh Shemel Shai is going to protect, man. The Lord is going to protect his men. He's going to be with his men. Okay, the remnant, the preserve. Okay, to stand against Esau Edom, man. The Lord's not just going to let Esau steamroll all the elect. All right. Again, we know some brothers going to be there a lot to have to be, like I said, to love not their lives unto the death, literally. All right. So talk about in Revelation, beat our faith unto death, and I'll give thee a crown of life. But the Lord's not just going to let Esau steamroll all the elect. There's going to be a remnant that actually get delivered out of these things. And Yahweh Shemel Shai is going to show his power and the duality of destroying and bringing judgment on the 2/3 here in America, as well as delivering the 1/3 remnant, okay, especially the elect, the 144,000 men that's actually on the earth. So, like I say, he's going into that. Like I say, everybody's heard about it now. That's how I'm listening to it. I'm just like, man, hey, Truly, this is Esau Edom, man. All right, truly, this Edom. Like I said again, go back to Genesis 27 chapter where Esau got the blessing of the sword, man. All right, from Isaac. We see it. That's why Esau Edom has these different type of technologies, man. And that's why Esau Edom is so proud. The Lord is perfectly fattening him for the slaughter. The Lord is doing multiple things at once. He's allowing Esau Edom to come down having great wrath. Again, Revelation 12:12 been coming out a lot recently on the line and videos. But also, like I say, he's allowing he's getting ready to do the judgment of the wicked of our people. All right, the ones again, like I said, who love this world, who don't want to repent, who've heard the gospel, and they rather do parody videos, they rather mock and scoff the true men, all right, bringing the message out, and speak bad about, I say, the message and the men bringing out the message, all right. But also, the Lord is fattening Esau his pride up because Yahushua will come with way more advanced weapons than Esau's ever seen, and none of his shit's gonna work on the Lord. And when Yahushua comes, like this devil's bragging about, we went in there with no casualties. When Yahushua and the angels, Michael, Gabriel, SYZ, all the angels come, that's just saying all the hosts of heaven with them, they're gonna have to take 0 casualties, man. They ain't gonna lose a single chariot. They gonna lose. They gonna have 0 injuries. All right. They're gonna have absolute a perfect military campaign. All right. Now he's talking about only America could have pulled that operation off. Okay, and well, only the heavens could pull off what Yahweh Shemel Shah is getting ready to do. He's getting ready to absolutely destroy America. In the midst of World War III, the Messiah, who the world only calls Jesus Christ, who they think is a so-called white man, really his Hebrew name is Yahushua Mashiach. He's a so-called black man. Okay, dark melanated skin with woolly hair. Okay, the afro and the beard. He's gonna come back and destroy all the so-called white man's army in World War III, and not just him, all these nations' military might, because they're all gonna be duking it out in World War III as is written in the Valley of Yehoshaphat, man, over there in the so-called Middle East, around Atlanta, Israel, Saudi Arabia, a little bit northeast of there. All right, that area. That's gonna be the that's gonna be the land. Okay, the area that all these nations go to fight, man. All right, but again, Yahushua can come back in the midst of that. Go read 2 Amos 13th chapter. Talks about that. Okay, I'm driving right now, but again, brother, on that chapter, he said Yahushua can come back in the midst of all that and judge the nations, man. All right, yeah, he tell you Revelation what he tell you. He come in righteousness, he does judge and make war. In Revelation 19th chapter, man, Yahushua's coming back to make war, man. All right, Yahushua the Messiah, he's not coming back how this world thinks. They think that so-called white man will come out the sky. He's gonna hand out flowers to everybody, man. No, the so-called black man's coming angry for what you've been doing to his people. The so-called black Latino Native Americans. Okay, he's gonna judge other nations, and he's gonna judge the wicked of his own people who don't want to bow down and worship him, man. Who don't want to come under the right order and the right doctrine. So here's real quick. Like says on my spirit, let's say if I can talk like somebody like the Tom Jacob trouble. Again, he's got multiple purposes. The Lord's getting ready to say to take out all these rebellious Israelites, both man, woman, and child, and he's getting ready to judge Esau Edom, man. All right, because again, right after Jacob's trouble is Esau's trouble, like the Apostle Hart goes into. Esau ain't going. Again, like the elder from London just did a video yesterday. There ain't gonna be no victors in World War III. All right, in World War III, the only victor is gonna be Yahushua and the elect. Okay, the other nations though who are trying to fight for supremacy in the NWO, it ain't gonna, like I said, it ain't gonna be none of that, man. Ain't gonna be no Russia won World War III. No. Yahushua is coming back to put all these heathen in slavery, man. And nevertheless, he's gonna use these heathen to shoot thermonuclear missiles on America, man. America will be completely destroyed in World War III. All right, so with that, we give all praise and glory to Yahweh Shemel Shah, Ba'ashem HaKakodash, Double honors to the Apostle Elder Great Millstone, Shalom to Hopeful Lake, Bible Ball, Kwame Ashram Shalom.
So, we have that to look forward to, and like everything else, so, we see that we're near the end of Esau's kingdom and the beginning of ours, So, yeah, Esau does have that kind of technology, to be able to do those kind of things, right? I believe it's some sort of stunning or, frequency weapon. Just on the simpler things. You know that everything's supposed to be at 432 megahertz, but Esau's got it out of tune with 44 megahertz, And that's how, music is played, right, on the 44. And sometimes on the 48 as well. Well, that's too high. 432 megahertz is where it's supposed to be. I remember Apostle Ramlab did a lesson on that. So, like everything else, so Esau, he's coming in with all of his technology, but that's not going to save him. They will not have superiority. It's the end of Esau's kingdom and the beginning of ours. There's another brother that I usually tune into in the morning, also doing a lesson. I'll play some of it and then close this out. But like everything else, we know that Esau's near the end. And for like everything else, we see that. Okay, he's going to come down having great wrath, knowing that he hath but a short time. It goes well into that. I'll put it in the AMP version, but it's in Revelation chapter 12. So, his time is just about up. So, he doesn't have much more time to fulfill his belly, to fulfill his goal of a new world order. So like everything else, so in the midst of World War III, Yahweh Shai and the angels, especially Michael, are going to come against Esau's power structure, right? And remember, dragon can mean draconian, as in draconian laws, etc., right? Which is that New World Order. That's basically what the dragon is it's the New World Order. Revelation chapter 12, verse 7, and war broke out in heaven, which in this case is talking about not Satan getting kicked out of heaven, but rather what's happening here is that the military force, also known as the Space Force, which Donald Trump has already declared, goes to war with Yahweh Shai and the angels. You know, Michael the Archangel and his angels waging war against the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought. You know, that is talking about, you know, Esau's Air Force, right? The Space Force, etc. But they were not strong enough and did not prevail. There was no longer a place found for them in heaven. Basically, they were totally wiped out. You know, they did not have air superiority. And the great dragon was thrown down, that age-old serpent who is called the devil and Satan. You know, which, you know, is talking about Esau. You know, because Satan, or Satan, means adversary. Devil also means deceiver. So, you know, the great deceiver is Esau Edom, in this case. Not the spiritual demon Satan, but rather the his counterpart, Esau, who continually deceives and seduces the entire inhabited world. He is thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. In other words, he was taken out of power. He lost his kingdom. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation, the power of the kingdom, and dominion, reign of our power, Yahweh, and his authority of his Hamashiach has come. For the accuser of our believing brothers and sisters has been thrown down at last, who accuses them and keeps bringing charges against them before our power day and night. So, like everything else though, well, that's talking about Esau, the Edomites. And they overcame and conquered them because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their testimony. You know, and this is where it really goes into the martyrs, who did not love their life and renounce their faith even when faced with death. So there's a reward for that. If you get killed, you know, proclaiming this truth, and you don't denounce your faith in Yahweh Shai, and the only way you can really denounce your faith in Yahweh Shai is not by, it's by taking the mark, the MOTB, you know, ultimately shows your rejection of Yahweh Shai, because that's what it's all about, or, you know, Yahweh Shai. You denounce it when being threatened with death, you know, and then you take the implantable, you know what, is ultimately, a lot of us are going to be killed for refusing it. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. You know, not looking for a place on here, but, you know, are looking to the new kingdom. In the presence of Yahweh. Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has come down to you in great wrath, knowing he has only a short time remaining. You know, so they know that they're about to be cast down forever. You know, totally destroyed, annihilated. And when the dragon saw that he was thrown down to the earth, he persecuted the woman who had given birth to the male child. Ultimately, came against the Israelites. See? You know, so we know that they have their end, and they're going to go out. This place, you know, is going to go out, you know, they're going to be very bitter in that day when they get cast down forever. So hopefully this has been edifying. Got one more here. Another brother's breaking it all down this morning, and we're going to play some of that before I close this out. So hopefully this has all been edifying. For that I want to say Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem Rakakadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakathum, Jehovah Olek, Shalom.
All right. All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shah, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders, GMS, who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards young brothers, and peace and blessings and salutations to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bashim Al Shah, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom on to the hopeful lake, the believers and listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashim Al Shah. All right, and getting into it this morning, dealing with morning news and prophecy. All right, and the war saga, continues. Just continue, to stay on the tail, on the trail, of this narrative. Dealing with, these small hats, America, Iran, Russia, all the major players according to prophecy, man. Okay, and this is why, we keep track of these things, because these are all major players and key players when it comes to prophecy. Okay, because according to prophecy, this is where, all right, the powder keg is going to explode. It's going to lead into this third world war, and it's going to go nuclear. Okay, America going to become a desert. Yahweh Shah is going to return. Okay, now with that being said, we have to understand, everything is in the Lord's time. Okay, because we see things get intense. We see a lot of rumors. Matter of fact, which we always go into it. Okay, we always get into this precept, but it's speaking. Because we don't, we want to hear something new. All right, I'm quite sure Genesis is cooking something fresh out this pot. All right, if you want to hear something new, all right, I'm gonna tell them what them niggas, and men like them, okay, which are liable to say anything, but we deal with what's happening, okay, as these prophecies, speak real time. We go into the scriptures concerning, all right, for the times that we're in, okay, not to be seen to be cute, but this is Jeremiah 51 and 46. It says, "Unleash your heart faint, and you fear from the rumor that shall be heard in the land." And our heart goes into our mind, becoming weak. Because we don't fear, all right, these wars that are constantly being talked about. Okay, there's a lot of people, they have a mindset of, and they just hope that there's not a World War III. They hope, that America and Russia don't get into it, America and Iran or whatever, America, China. You see, a lot of people, they hope for no war because they want this place to continue. Okay, but as we, been awakened to the truth, where we have a complete opposite expectation, because we know this place being destroyed, okay, is necessary for us to go into the kingdom, man, for righteousness to be established in the earth, for us to come into the promises and the blessings, get these new bodies, okay, shed these old bodies, man, get back to life, get back to living, enjoying, family, men, Israelite men can enjoy their families, their wives, their children, rule the earth in righteousness with Yahweh. Okay, and we know before we get to that point, okay, that the earth has to go into war. All right, because this is the war in which Yahweh is going to conquer the earth in righteousness, man. And this is the driving force behind us constantly going into these things. You see, and it says, "Unleash your heart faint, and you fear for the rumor that shall be heard in the land. A rumor shall both come 1 year, and after that, in another year, shall a rumor come, and violence in the land, ruler against ruler." So we're going to constantly be hearing these circulating stories, okay, dealing with this war, what these nations plan on doing, the moves being made, the he said, she said, okay. So we're going to constantly, hear these things, and we go into these things, okay. But it's going to be a continuation of hearing these rumors, and then it's going to come to a point to where these nations, they got to hit, because they got to, okay. It ain't a matter of if, it's when, okay. And like I said, we'll see things, get intense. Okay, and we'll see, backpedaling, they get off the off ramp. Okay, they'll have some exchanges for a few days, kind of feel each other out. Okay, and then they go back to their corner, and this is all, the process, because our patience, is on trial as well. Our patience is on trial during this process as we're watching these things unfold. Okay, so let's go here to the book of 2nd Ezra, the 4th chapter, and then I got quite a few of videos of me jumping around just to kind of keep us in the loop, of what's going on, across the water. So it says, this is 2nd Ezra 4:28. It says, "But concerning the things whereof thou askest me, I will tell thee, for the evil is sown, but the destruction thereof is not yet come." Okay, so the evil was sown, back in the garden. And this is the fruits of the wickedness that was sown way back in the garden, man. And they're going to go into it. But see, when Ezra was inquiring about the end, because Ezra wanted the end back then. All right, so the archangel Uriel is letting you know, like, look, the evil has been sown in the earth already, but the destruction ain't come. Okay, because wickedness, all right, has to fulfill a certain, you see, a certain measure as well, before the judgment comes. Cause so as we await, this third world war, we're going to see, wickedness increase, okay, degeneracy, rebellion, okay, against Yahweh Bashim al-Shah. We're going to see these things increase, okay, until the time of judgment. It says that therefore, verse 29 says, therefore that which is not sown be not turned upside down, and if the place where the evil is sown pass not away, then cannot it come that is sown with good. Okay, and what's going to turn this place upside down? Okay, what's going to sweep this place? All right, like the best, as it says in the scripture, it's going to be war, and this war's going to go nuclear, man. Okay, and that's going to be the uprooting of this man's kingdom, his rulership. Okay, the return of Yahweh, and those chariots, man, getting busy on the militaries of the earth. Okay, so we're watching the build up to this place, being rooted out, man. This kingdom being rooted out. Okay, being swept off the earth, man. America being completely, okay, erased off the map, man. You see, verse 30 said, "For the grain of evil seed has been sown in the heart of Adam from the beginning, and how much ungodliness have it brought up until this time, and how much shall it bring forth until the time of threshing come?" Okay, so we're looking at, from the time of Adam until now. Okay, we're in the fruits of their wickedness. You see, this is the result of that conversation between the serpent and Eve. We're living in it. Okay, you want to know what the serpent and Eve talked about in the garden? Okay, just go to World Star. Okay, go to TikTok. Okay, go go through the neighborhood. You see, it's the results of it, man. All right. Then Adam, he fell. He partook in it. And then the sons of God fell, and we fell all the way here. You see, like you falling from, say you fall from a building, then you hit the bottom. You eventually hit the ground. Well, this is the ground, okay? And this is what the Lord's getting ready to judge, man, okay? Because outside of the remnant whom the Lord, has begun the restoration process, man, our people are at rock bottom. Okay, you look at like, how can you get too much lower than, Sexy Red, a young boy, Lil Uzi Vert, Lil Nas X? Like, how can you get below that? Okay, our people have, reached ground zero. So now it's the time for a great reset. Okay, and this great reset is going to be done through war. All right, the Lord's going to reserve a remnant of Israel, okay, to bring back the rest of this nation in righteousness, man. Okay, understanding why we're here, man. We're here. This is real live nation building. It begins with this wisdom, us being rooted in wisdom and understanding. Okay, and the remnant that's delivered. That's why I said, little one shall become 1,000, a small one, a strong nation, man. Okay, because Yahweh Shai, he's going to come and take down the enemies and conquer the heathen. He's going to, provide the atmosphere for us to be fruitful. All right, to multiply and be fruitful in righteousness, man. Okay. So we have to understand what we're a part of and what we're seeing the build up to. Okay, the war is just a phase, okay, of the Lord fulfilling his promises, man, to his people. Okay? And we're seeing this thing build up. So verse 31 said, "Ponder now by thyself how great fruit your wickedness the grain of evil seed have brought forth, and when the ears shall be cut down, which are without number, how great a floor shall they feel, man, in this war." Okay, and the return of Yahushua, okay, he's gonna fill the earth with bodies. Okay, I just want we got to understand that this earth is gonna be, this war like is gonna fill the planet Earth with bodies everywhere, man. Plus what Yahushua, but brother want to get that in Jeremiah 25 and 34, 30, Jeremiah 25, 34 and 35, I want to say. Okay, because the Lord's going to come through in their chariot threshing. Yahushua and those angels, man, they're going to be putting shit down, man. It's going to be a slaughter. Okay, so we're seeing the build up to this great slaughter Yahushua is coming back with. We speak about, the hypersonics and, the Mach 10 missiles, man, but Yahushua is coming with something above that to judge this earth, man. Okay, so we're watching the build up to it. This is what we're watching the build up to. This is why, hey, everything is on the line with this conflict. You see, the Venezuela and Nigeria, okay, they talking about Cuba and Greenland. They really don't even factor in. Okay, the main stage for World War III is these small hats in Iran. Okay, when they lock up, Okay, when they really lock up, you know, this is what it's going to lead to. It's going to lead all the way. It's going to be a chain of events that's going to lead to the house shot. Okay? So, you know, I say the brother could have been Jeremiah 25 and 34. Okay? Because the house shot is coming back to do the threshing. You know, because the Heavenly Father has a depopulation agenda. Okay? It's a lot of spirits that's going to get out of him. You know? It's 33, so like, yeah, brother post that Jeremiah 25 and 33. Okay. So let's finish this. It says, and when the ears shall be cut down, which are without number, how great a floor shall they feel? Then I answered and said, how and when shall these things come to pass? Wherefore are our years few and evil? So Ezra is inquiring about, okay, when it's going to happen? And I'm hearing you speak on these things, when. Okay? So, you know, Ezra, you know, he was real, you know, you tell he was agitated, you know, but he was inquiring. Okay?
It's exciting.
Like, down here, man. You know,
he's excited about it.
Bodies, and, you know, you look at Jake, okay? You know, Jake just constantly being influenced by wickedness. You see? So Ezra's like, man, when that change gonna come? When the judgment gonna come? You know, verse 34 says, he answered me saying, do not thou hasten above the most highest, for thou hastest in vain to be above him, for thou hast much exceeded. Okay? So we can't hasten above the most high. We'll be doing too much.
Gotta have patience.
You know, we'll be hasting in vain. So it's all a thing of time. We see these things happening, but we also
gotta be patient while hasting.
All in the Lord's time. You know, we see these things intensify, but we know, you know, we stay ready. You know, the scripture says our bags are packed at the door. Okay, ready to leave, man. Okay, make you ready to the battle, be ye even as pilgrims upon the earth. So our bags are packed at the door.
Yep.
Okay, that's the mindset we in. But then we have to understand, you know, it's a thing of patience, the Lord's time, because everybody's patience is on trial as well. Okay, you know, because I know brothers remember that about 6 years ago, you know, when Trump assassinated General Soleimani, okay, the Iranian general, you know, he was a hero in that whole region. You know, I think like 10 million people came to the funeral, you know, so he was beloved over there, man. You know, and we thought then it was finna go down. You see, we thought we was out of here, man. We
had to wait patiently for it, right? Man. Wasn't time yet.
You know, when he did that in 2020, we thought for sure this thing was finna kick off. Okay? But as we follow these things and, you know, through time we get experience, you know, as we become, you know, mature in the spirit, we understand that it's all the Lord's time, you know. So, I'm going to jump down to verse 37. This the point. It says, by measure hath he measured the time, and by number hath he numbered the times, and he doth not move nor stir them until the said measure be fulfilled, man. You know?
So a lot of other things have to be fulfilled before the nuclear missiles get shot off. And we know what the fulfillment of those things are. The New World Order has to come into play. The MOTB has to be mandated worldwide. And they have to come pretty close to having everybody numbered with them. Meaning that they've been chipped. And then the war will break out. So we got to have patience for what's going on. It gets exciting to see all these nations of power getting ready to destroy each other. But it's not yet. Just like Yahushua told us, the end is not yet. But we're at the beginning of it. So hopefully this has been edifying. Shalom, Barak the Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakatum, Jehovah elect. Shalom.